Bonjour à tous. Hello, everyone. Kwe Kakina. This press conference is being held in Ottawa on Tuesday, October 22nd. I'm the moderator, Greg Quinn with Market News International. With us today for a weekly economic update, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance Chrystia Freeland, Minister of Employment, Workforce Development and Official Languages, Randy Boissonnault, et aussi avec nous, Jean-Yves Duclos, Ministre des Services Publics. I'm told the ministers are here for something like 40 minutes. I have already read out the health and safety announcement about audio conditions here. And with that, I believe that is everything. Ministers, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks everyone for being here. And I do want to start by just recognizing the work that all the people at PSP, Parliamentary Protective Services, do to make it possible for all of us to do our jobs. On this anniversary, I think it's worth reflecting on how essential they are, and they take risks every day. So thank you very much to them. Alors, je vais commencer.
I'll begin by talking about the Canadian economy, and then I'll talk about actions we are taking to protect and support Canadian workers and tariffs, and then after that, new measures on artificial intelligence. After that, my colleague, Minister Randy Boissonnault, will talk about reforms to the Temporary Foreign Worker Program. And after that, my colleague, Jean-Yves Duclos, will talk more about what we are doing about artificial intelligence and to promote the adoption of artificial intelligence in the whole Canadian economy.
I'll start by making a couple of comments about the Canadian economy. We have been having some good news in recent weeks. Last week, we got the September inflation number. That was 1.6%. In the bottom part of the Bank of Canada's 1 to 3% target range, below 2%. For 9 months now, inflation in Canada has been within the Bank of Canada's target range. And the September number was a 3.5-year low. With inflation coming down, we have now seen 3 interest rate cuts. The Bank of Canada was the first central bank in a G7 country to cut interest rates for the first time. It was the first central bank in a G7 country to cut interest rates for the second time. And it was the first central bank in a G7 country to cut interest rates for the third time. And, you know, last week was a constituency week. I spent time in my own riding and also in Alberta and Manitoba. And so many Canadians who I talk to have been very concerned about mortgage renewals. And the fact that rates have been coming down has been a real relief for Canadians. Wages have now outpaced inflation for 20 months in a row. And in September, we had a good jobs number, 47,000 jobs created, and the unemployment number actually went down a little bit. The IMF published today its World Economic Outlook. And in that outlook, Canada is forecast by the IMF to have the strongest economic growth in the G7 in 2025. There is a lot more we need to do, but on the macroeconomic front, we're seeing some solid progress. Alors, je vais maintenant parler.
So I would now like to talk about tariff measures. Today, we announced 100% tariffs on all electric vehicles manufactured in China. That was effective October 1st. And we announced that we would put in place 25% tariffs on imports of steel and aluminum products from China. Today is the coming into force of that measure.
Significant day. Today is the day that our tariffs on Chinese steel and aluminum of 25% enter into force. This is a really important measure. It is to protect these essential Canadian industries and the Canadians who work there from unfair Chinese trade practices, from an intentional policy of Chinese overcapacity, in an environment where neither labor nor environmental standards are honored. It's also really important because it is absolutely essential for the Canadian economy that we can say to our partners in North America that Canada will not be a backdoor for diverted Chinese goods, whether it is electric vehicles or steel and aluminum. We are also announcing today a remissions framework. We know that there are some businesses that are anxious about adjusting to this shift in supply chains. It's really important for us that these essential measures do not harm Canadian businesses or Canadian workers. So we are prepared to offer tariff relief in exceptional circumstances. And we're publishing today an email address that Canadian businesses can use to apply for tariff relief and a framework that will guide decisions on remissions. A second announcement for today is moving forward on the support for AI and AI adoption that we announced in the budget in the spring. Canada is a global AI superpower. There is no better evidence of this than the fact that Canada's own, University of Toronto's own Jeff Hinton was recently awarded a Nobel Prize for his groundbreaking research. That research, that Canadian strength in AI and in the underlying thinking behind it is a huge advantage for Canada in the economy today. Our government knows that helping Canadian businesses adopt AI is a really important part of leveraging and taking advantage of the Canadian AI advantage. Today, we are announcing how we're going to be investing $300 million of the $2.4 million for AI that we put forward in the budget in the spring. We're launching a $200 million regional artificial intelligence initiative. The regional development agencies will help support AI startups to bring new technology to market, and they will help drive AI adoption by Canadian businesses across the economy. I do want to say to Canadian businesses who are excited about the benefits of AI in their businesses, please think about using a Canadian AI company when you are using AI in your business. This is a great strength we have, and take advantage of it. Take advantage of the great AI companies we have here at home. On a un plan économique.
We have an economic plan, a plan for affordability, to build more housing faster, and for economic growth. Our priority is to give a fair chance to every generation. And now I will give the floor to my dear colleague, Randy Boissonneau. Thank you very much, Chrystia. Hello, everyone.
Here, look, as a member of the queer community and the first openly gay MP for Alberta and the first openly gay minister to be around the cabinet table from Alberta, I just want to share with you how much I have already felt in less than 24 hours, the queer community breathing a sigh of relief in New Brunswick. They were under attack by the Higgs government, and now they have a premier that's going to work for all New Brunswickers. And I think it's a cautionary tale for leaders in other parts of the country that you should not be trying to play to your base on the backs of vulnerable children or on minorities. C'est une grande journée pour la communauté queer à travers.
It's a great day for queer communities across the country because we've seen that the values of Canadians and New Brunswickers have clearly said that all New Brunswickers matter. And it's a time when queer people in that province have hope.
Today's announcement. Earlier this year, we announced changes to the temporary foreign worker program. Changes that cap the hiring of temporary foreign workers under the low-wage stream to no more than 10% of a business's total workforce. And these are changes that limited also employment durations to 1 year, and that implemented a refusal to process temporary foreign worker applications in census metropolitan areas that have unemployment rates of higher than 6%. Nous avons pris ces mesures pour suivre le rythme de l'économie.
We took these measures to reflect the economy, to respond to trends in the market, and to give Canadian talent access to jobs here in our country.
Announcement, we also committed to a 90-day review of the high wage stream under the temporary foreign worker program. Et donc, aujourd'hui, j'annonce.
Today, I announce our next step to fight the abusive and fraudulent use and to strengthen the temporary foreign workers program. Starting on November 8th, the starting hourly wage for workers coming into Canada through the high wage stream will be increased by 20%.
Next steps to address misuse and fraud, as well as to tighten the overall temporary foreign worker program. So effective November 8th, the starting hourly wage for workers coming into Canada under the high wage stream will be increased by 20%. So what does this mean? It means an average increase, depending on where you are in the country, of $5 to $8 per hour, depending on the province or territory. And it means that for an employer to bring in a temporary foreign worker under the high wage stream, the salary must be 20% higher than it currently is. And so we anticipate that this is going to affect about 34,000 workers in Canada, and it will eliminate 20,000 applications, resulting, when you take all of our changes together, 90,000 fewer applications over the next year into the temporary foreign worker program. And when you set aside primary agriculture, this is a reduction of well over 50% of the temporary foreign worker program in Canada. Ce programme a toujours été conçu comme une mesure.
This program was always intended to be used as an extraordinary measure, to be used only when a qualified Canadian wasn't able to fill a job vacancy.
So, look, we took a look at the numbers, and we had some people trying to play the system, because there's a difference between the high wage stream and the low wage stream. There are more protections to people in the low wage stream, and we had people literally paying $1 or $2 more just to get themselves into the high wage stream, to which not as many restrictions and requirements apply. So we are making a very clear statement that if it's going to be a high salary employee, then the salary needs to be higher. So as it stands right now, Canada's employment is 6.5%. It's even higher among young people, and it's clear that talented workers are here and they're ready to get to work, and we need to help them find work. Let me give you an example. I'll share with you the occupations that are most affected, the top 5 by these changes today. Truck drivers, construction, trade, helpers and laborers, admin officers and assistants, and accounting techs and bookkeepers. There are Canadians, permanent residents, people here right now, living here right now, who can take these jobs. And what we can't allow with the temporary foreign worker program is it to become a first resort and a means to suppress Canadian wages and overlook our talent. And I know that the vast majority of people who use this program do so as intended, but some employers are finding ways to get around program requirements, and that's why we've made the changes that we're talking about here today. And look, we're talking about cents on the dollar, but it matters to the workers who are going to get these wages and this increased amount of hourly wage, and that's important. En tant que ministre de l'Emploi, je vais toujours.
As Employment Minister, I will always work with all sectors throughout the country to help them find and invest in the workers they need.
Workforce Summit, 21st Century Workforce Summit for the first time in 12 years last week. On a eu notre premier sommet sur le.
We had our first summit on the 21st century's labor. We hadn't met as an ecosystem in 12 years, and people pushed us to have more work on productivity, more changes to this program.
Delivering here today. So I want to make sure that 50% of our workforce, which is made up by millennials and Gen Z, have access to these jobs, and that's why we've made the moves we've made today. Merci.
Okay, et maintenant, nous passons le...
Now, over to Jean-Yves. Thank you very much, Randy. Thank you, Chrystia. Allow me to come back to some of the points raised by my 2 dear colleagues. First, we are making major changes to the temporary foreign worker program to ensure that these workers are paid well and can live and work with dignity. We also want to ensure that temporary foreign workers are not used as a permanent solution for jobs that could otherwise be filled by Canadians and people who already live in the country. This is in addition to other announcements made in partnership recently with the Government of Quebec to reduce the influx of temporary immigrants to Quebec. Second, we are injecting $200 million into Canadian businesses and workers through Canada's regional development agencies. This will help startups develop and enable more small businesses to make the transition to artificial intelligence. We know that Quebec is one of the global leaders in artificial intelligence, responsible artificial intelligence. This amount, along with $100 million to help more businesses improve their productivity and the salaries of their workers through AI-based solutions, is part of a $2.4 billion plan announced in the 2024 budget. This plan will enable Canada and Quebec to remain leaders in artificial intelligence. Finally, we are also announcing that the additional 25% tariffs on Chinese steel and aluminum products will take effect today. These tariffs were announced a few weeks ago and are being implemented after consultation and collaboration with the Canadian industries concerned. These tariffs are important to protect steel and aluminum workers from China's unfair competition and questionable environmental and social practices. Canada, as we know, is the world's fourth largest aluminum producer after China, India, and Russia. With 10 of Canada's 11 aluminum plants, Quebec is an industry leader with the greenest, most ethical aluminum in the world. To conclude, today's three announcements on artificial intelligence, temporary foreign workers, and tariffs on Chinese steel and aluminum are good news for all Quebecers and all other Canadians. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Oui, on est prêt à répondre à vos...
We are ready to answer your questions.
Premièrement, Olivia Stéphane.
First, CBC.
Good afternoon, ministers. Minister Freeland, how important do you think it is for caucus members to voice their concerns openly tomorrow about the state of your party and its leadership?
Very important. I think we all recognize that in a parliamentary democracy, caucus is king. We're a government because of our caucus. We're a government because the MPs who are in our caucus put their name on a ballot, worked really, really hard to get elected, won the confidence of their constituents, and work hard every day to listen to their constituents and to represent the views of their constituents here in Ottawa in the government. So I, could not take more seriously the point of view of every single one of my caucus colleagues. Each one of us is a caucus member. And we've been having, during the constituency week already this week in Ottawa, some very candid and important conversations in the caucuses that we are all members of. That's great. That is so important to do, and that's what we've been doing. And, there's a lot of us. We're the plurality in Parliament. Of course, there is a diversity of views in our caucus. I am absolutely confident, and more confident after conversations I've been having in Ottawa over the past 36 hours than ever, that the vast majority of Liberal MPs support the Prime Minister, support him as leader of our government today, support him as leader of our party, and support him as the guy who's going to lead us into the next election.
Thank you. And the Bloc Québécois is now saying that they would support a motion to close the privilege debate in the House of Commons if your government agrees to make strides on such things as passing the two bills that they have on seniors and supply management by October 29th. So will you do that in order to end this privilege debate in the House of Commons?
We have been having some really good conversations with the Bloc, some really good conversations with the NDP. We recognize that we're a minority in Parliament, and in order to advance the work of the Government of Canada, in order to work for the people of Canada, we need to be working with other parties elected to this Parliament. And so we're having really good conversations with both of those parties, and those conversations are continuing.
Marc-André Cossette, Global.
Ministers, for taking our questions. Minister Freeland, is your government considering proroguing Parliament?
No.
Okay. We've been hearing a lot about, obviously, the significant discontent within Liberal ranks. At what point do you think this becomes an untenable situation for the Prime Minister?
I don't mean to be disputatious, Marc-André, but I would not agree with your characterization. There is for sure a diversity of views in caucus. That is normal and natural. And one of the great things about the Liberal Party is we are a party that believes in and respects the point of view of every single MP, and that believes in having truly open conversations within our caucus, within our party. That's how we have always operated. Having said that, I am truly confident that the vast majority of my caucus colleagues support the Prime Minister, as I do.
Marc-André, maybe a perspective from the West. Look, I have hard fights every time I go to an election, right? I was not supposed to win any election that I won. And we roll up our sleeves, we get the work done, we talk to our constituents, and in my case, 2 out of 3 times, I got to be an MP. And one of the reasons I'm a Liberal is because we're a party that listens, and we're a party that takes in diverse voices from across the country, even in our own regions, and that really matters. And look, I don't know if I can be more blunt about this, but look, I've been alongside Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in 3 elections, and I intend to fight alongside him a 4th election. And anybody who's ever bet against Justin Trudeau has regretted that choice the next morning.
And I would add that what Chrystia just said is not only natural and normal, but it's also healthy to have those conversations within our caucus, because Canadians have those sorts of conversations every day. Life in the world in 2024 is complicated. Now we see the impact of the post-pandemic inflation hitting other countries even worse than it hits Canada. We see climate change, the catastrophes. We see the violence and the conflicts around the world. So it's healthy. And we do it all the time. We've been doing it since 2015. We have these difficult conversations at caucuses every week. So this needs to continue, and this week is just one more instance. And I would support Chrystia's view and Randy's view that, to my knowledge, and I'm going to see that again tomorrow at the Quebec caucus and the National caucus, there is a very strong support to the Prime Minister. And that's because the alternative, which is Pierre Poilievre, is incredibly bad for Canada. No, in Quebec we see it even better. It's a politics of lies, insults, and chaos, and cuts everywhere. And that's not what would appeal to Quebecers, I'm sure, at the next elections.
And I agree with everything Jean-Yves has said, except Quebec doesn't see it even better. We all see it that way.
Maybe we all see it.
I'm only teasing.
Jordan Gowling, Financial Post.
Hi, thanks for taking our questions. I just wanted to ask you, Minister Freeland, about the PBO report that was released last week. It has you exceeding your $40 billion deficit pledge for this fiscal year and last. How do you account for what changed between the spring budget and now? How did that projection change? What happened?
Well, first of all, that is just a PBO report. It's not the final numbers. But let me say a couple of things. The PBO reported this summer very significantly. The Parliamentary Budget Officer did a very thorough report on the public finances and asked the question, are Canada's public finances sustainable? And the answer from the PBO was definitively, absolutely. In that report, the PBO concluded that Canada's public finances are sustainable over the long term, federal finances and also national and also overall. And the PBO also said that we are in such an advantageous financial position, fiscal position, that the public finances are sustainable over the long term with a margin, and that we could be spending even more and the public finances would still be sustainable. I'm not advocating for that, but I'm simply saying that the PBO report was very, very clear. Now, that is not a surprise because Canada has the lowest debt to GDP and the lowest deficit to GDP in the G7 by a long shot. Since COVID, when it was absolutely necessary and the right thing to do to spend money to support Canada and Canadians, since then we've also had the fastest rate of fiscal consolidation in the G7. And we're seeing the results of that fiscal prudence. Inflation in Canada has come down really significantly. And you're from the National Post, but the Globe and Mail concluded in a story they had a couple of days ago, pointed out correctly that inflation has come down in Canada faster and more sustainably than in other peer countries. That's significant. That's important in the lives of Canadians. That is permitting interest rates, which are a real challenge for Canadians and the Canadian economy. It's permitting interest rates to come down. And we are getting the benefit of our fiscally responsible position also in the public finances. Canada's cost of debt is significantly lower than the cost of debt for the US Treasury. It is significantly lower than the cost of debt for the UK Treasury. If we had the same federal cost of debt that those two countries have, we would be paying billions of dollars every year more in debt service charges. So, our government recognizes the importance of fiscal responsibility and its value. And then the final thing that I'll say is, we recognize the importance of fiscal responsibility because we know that that is what makes it possible for us to have inflation coming down, for us to have interest rates coming down. At the end of the day, we know that what matters to Canadians is what they're experiencing in their lives. And that's why our focus is on housing, getting more homes built faster, so important to Canadians. And the fact that we have seen rents coming down recently in the GTA, in the Lower Mainland, where rent has been such a pressure, very important. The fact that inflation now has been within the Bank of Canada's target range for 9 months in a row, really, really significant when it comes to affordability. And then finally, our focus now that we're getting to a soft landing is really on growth, growth, growth. And that's why I started off by talking about the IMF's World Economic Outlook that shows Canada with the strongest economic growth next year in the G7.
And speaking on growth, you tasked the former Bank of Canada Governor Stephen Poloz to provide some recommendations on how to get Canada's biggest pension plans and biggest institutional investors to invest more in this country. I'm wondering if you can just provide any update on that and whether or not you'll make his recommendations public.
Steve is a great Canadian. He is widely respected across Canada, and he has been doing a lot of work on this. He has been working with the pension funds. He has been getting a lot of feedback and input from business leaders, labor leaders, other Canadians across the country, and he's been working directly with me in the Department of Finance. He has some great ideas, and we are now working really hard to land that plane. But I'm very excited about the work that he's been doing. I think it's very promising.
Mike Lucature,
Mr. Freeland, thanks for taking our questions. Members of the Sikh community and the leader of the NDP are calling on your government to take a tougher stance on India, even suggesting economic sanctions versus the country or sanctions against politicians from India because of what has happened and the accusations and the 6 diplomats as well that have been expelled. Is your government considering something along those lines?
Thank you for the question. I do think it's really important for all Canadians to take very seriously the work the RCMP has been doing and what the RCMP has uncovered. And what what the investigations of the RCMP are showing is something completely unacceptable. Canadians in Canada cannot be killed. Canadians in Canada cannot be persecuted by a foreign government. We as a country just have to be absolutely clear that this is not acceptable and that we will not tolerate it. Our government and our Prime Minister have taken a very strong position on this, expelling diplomats for being engaged in those activities. I'm really glad to be part of a government that is prepared to stand up for Canadians who have been persecuted for some time in our own country by foreign actors. So it's a really important question. It's an important issue. I want to say to all Canadians, especially Sikh Canadians, that you absolutely have a right to be safe here in Canada, and being sure you are safe is our unequivocal priority.
Before asking my follow-up, I just want to note you didn't really answer the question over whether or not you're considering sanctions.
We have taken really strong measures, stronger than any previous government has taken on this issue, and I do want Canadians to have absolute confidence that their government is going to stand up for them, is standing up for them, and will continue to do that.
Okay, so just on what my follow is now, I just noted the full-throated support that the three of you had for not only the discussion within caucus about the leadership of the Prime Minister, but how much does it affect, how difficult does it make your jobs in the fact that there are Liberals who are actively trying to go around and orchestrate the ouster of your leader?
Let me really, I cannot say too strongly the extent to which I am absolutely confident that the vast majority of my caucus colleagues support the Prime Minister. We are a broad church and a big tent. And it is really actually a healthy thing for us to have open and frank conversations inside that tent, inside that church. I believe in that. I am not afraid of having disagreements with my colleagues, of listening to their point of view and having a frank and candid conversation. We've been doing that. But I really cannot reiterate too strongly the extent to which the vast majority of MPs, in my view, strongly support the Prime Minister. They support his leadership of our party. They support his leadership of the government. But the other thing I want to say is the vast majority of Liberal MPs also recognize that these conversations and most of the questions that we've been asked today are not what is central to Canadians. Canadians care much more about the stuff that we started off talking about. Canadians do not care very much, in my view, about kind of sports competition style of Ottawa political coverage. That's not what makes a difference in their daily lives. What Canadians really care about is that inflation has been within the Bank of Canada's target range for 9 months. That makes a real difference to Canadian families. What Canadians really care about is that interest rates have come down now 3 times in a row, and people who are looking at renewing their mortgage are feeling real relief when they see that. Canadians really care that rent in the GTA and in the Lower Mainland has actually come down. That is real relief for Canadians. And Canadians care about concrete, tangible support for them in their communities. We're hitting the $1 million mark on Canadians getting dental care through our dental care plan. That is like an older person who couldn't afford dentures before, now getting dentures, and maybe able to eat food more easily. That's what people care about. Canadians care about the fact that we have now done deals on a national school food program with 2 provinces, with Newfoundland and Labrador and with Manitoba, where I was on Friday. And, you know, I can tell you, being there with colleagues, with the Premier of Manitoba, going in to just like a beautiful kindergarten classroom and giving those kids a little piece of bannock. They had some bannock, they had a carton of milk, they had a choice of jam flavors and some butter, and they were so happy to get their snack. Canadians care about being supported with these programs that make a real difference in their lives. And, you know, I have a lot of humility about the extent to which Canadians care about political shenanigans in Ottawa. And I think they don't care that much. And good for them.
Mike, just to build on what the Deputy Prime Minister was saying, I am old enough to remember the first campaign, 78-day campaign. Remember that, everybody, who was on that long odyssey? And it was August, and the NDP was still polling in the mid to high 30s. And there was grumblings in caucus then. And what happened a few weeks later? We won a majority government. And so this isn't the first time we've seen, you know, spirits run high and passions run high. That's part of Liberal DNA. And I spent a lot of time in my riding over the last week in housing, jobs, healthcare, and getting to 1 million participants in dental care, fighting the climate change, and in my part of the world, helping Jasper rebuild. That's what people talk to me about on the street.
Madame Freeland, Monsieur Duclos, est-ce que c'est possible d'avoir
Is it possible to have a short answer in French on the question of confidence in the Prime Minister? Go ahead. Listen, personally, I have a huge amount of confidence and recognition for the Prime Minister. He has everything necessary to lead us in the next election. And for after the next election, in a world where everything is changing. The theme of the next election will be, what change do we want? There's what Pierre Poilievre is proposing, which is to go backwards, sometimes very far backwards, on issues that we should have settled a long time ago, or to benefit from the advantages we have in Quebec and Canada to build a better future for all Quebecers and all other Canadians. And within the Quebec caucus and the National Caucus, as the Deputy Prime Minister has said, Chrystia, there is very, very significant support in favor of the leadership of the Prime Minister. It's natural for there to be varied points of views. It's the role of MPs to reflect the different perspectives they're hearing in their ridings. But at the end of the day, what's important is what we do every day, which is to fight for Quebecers and Canadians who've elected us. In a complicated world, for MPs and especially for those listening to us. And I would just add one thing. Respect for caucus. It's essential to me. We have a parliamentary system of government, and that means that we exist as a government thanks to our caucus. So the points of view of each member of parliament, Liberal member of parliament, is crucial to me. And listening and having discussions one-on-one and together is essential. It's a good thing to do. It's essential. That's the first thing. Second thing, I'm absolutely confident that the vast majority of Liberal MPs support the Prime Minister. that we support his leadership of our government, his leadership of our Liberal Party, and that we are all ready to work with him on his leadership in the next election. The third thing, I know that this is a time with a lot of drama, which is naturally interesting for journalists, but I'm also so confident that our work is to serve Canadians, to really focus on the main issues for them: housing, affordability, economic growth. This is our focus.
We have David Baxter, Canadian Press, and I believe we're hitting the buzzer here.
Right. No, thanks for taking our questions. And there's been a lot of talk about Liberal unity today and the need to present a united front as a caucus. Do you expect that this issue will be put to bed tomorrow once the caucus meets?
Yes, I do.
What gives you that assurance?
Everything that we've been saying. I really believe, and I am absolutely confident that the vast majority of Liberal MPs support the Prime Minister, support his leadership of our party and our government, and want to work together. And having been back in Ottawa now for 36 hours, I'm more convinced of that than ever.
And just for Minister Boissonnault on the temporary foreign worker changes, do you expect the need for further restrictions to rein in the number of temporary foreign workers coming in? And is there any time limit on what you announced today, similar to what's going on in Quebec with Montreal?
No time limit. The rules will be the rules as of early November. And to your point about continuing tightening measures, I'm watching this program like a hawk. And if we have to make more changes, we will make more changes. And if anybody has a question about the cost of an labor market impact assessment, expect it to go up.
Okay, and I do want to say, please pay attention, please, to the tariff announcement, and the remissions framework is going to be significant, but also the AI announcement. I see this as a real area of Canadian leadership. And I'm really excited about our government providing support for AI adoption across the Canadian economy. I see this as a real opportunity for us to have growth, productivity, Canadian leadership in the world.
Before we close, I'd be remiss because Christia's talked about AI, Jean-Yves talked about AI, and the third place in the country where AI is very strong is Edmonton. So there you got the three epicenters of AI represented by ministers today because it's so important for our future. So thank you.
And we did that on purpose. Thanks a lot.
That's all the time. Thank you, Merci, Miigwech.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. And thank you for your patience with the change in time.